What are we doing here today, guys? What's going on?
I have no idea.
What is this? Yeah, there's this mystery thing in the
You just
schedule
said,
today.
"Show up," so
that
here
says,
we are.
what does it even say in the schedule? Does it say hiker panel or
Q&A?
Q&A or something like
Yeah.
that? Yeah, I left this intentionally vague because
Good.
today's panel, I think, is going to give us a really good idea of just how the thru hiker community not only comes together to like do a thing, but also how, I don't know, I think kind of way this panel came together is a metaphor for hiking, which can also be a metaphor for life. We had a plan on how we were going to do this. We had a list of people who were going to show up, and we had questions and topics and everything. And Miss Janet is the only person on the original schedule who joined us. So about an hour before we started, I saw Miss Janet come into the building, and I gave her a hug, and I said, Miss Janet, our panel is falling apart. None of the guests are here. It's just you and me. What are you going to do? I told her what I wanted. Here's kind of what I want. What I'd like for us to do today is to have a discussion. It's mostly going to be us up here, but you guys feel free to raise your hands or yell out things too as well. But we're going to have a discussion about topics that might challenge the way you think about the trail. And these are questions that don't really have a right or wrong answer. Maybe some of them do. A lot of this is up to opinions. And what I want to get is I'm going to get 4 different perspectives on each of these questions. So my idea was to have a veteran trail angel participate. We have Miss Janet with us.
Trail devil.
Yep. I wanted to have a hostel operator join us, and the person who I was originally in contact with didn't show up this weekend. I think we got upgraded this week. I think we got upgraded this time. Chuck Norris of Laughing Heart will be joining us for, whatever. If you ever want to know what a hostel operator thinks about certain things, today you're going to find out what one of them thinks. I wanted to get perspectives from somebody who recently finished the trail. Chris Clevenger, whose trail name is Turnaround, is joining us this evening. And then I also wanted to get the perspective of someone who was new to hiking or new to thru hiking, in particular, somebody who was just about to start the trail. And remember I said Miss Janet helped us pull things together at the last possible minute? I gave her a hug and I said, I need the following 3 things, help. And like 5 minutes later, Miss Janet was like, yeah, you're cool. So the point being that we met so recently, I don't know your name.
My name's Rachel.
Rachel is joining us today, and Rachel... Hiking with Arrow. Rachel has a YouTube channel called Hiking with Arrow. She doesn't have a trail name yet, but that might be one of the things that we talk about.
Cool.
So let's get started with some of these questions, and we're gonna just get right to something that I think is. Well, I'm not gonna put my opinion into too much of this. I want to hear what you guys have to say. We're sitting up here with all these microphones. We've got 5 microphones, and there's a mixing board here. And you can see I've got my Stories from the Trail t-shirt on because we're recording this as a podcast called Stories from the Trail. The microphones were set up for us with the help of Skip Huber from Happy Camper Radio, who is here with us tonight. Miss Janet is involved with something called HikerTV. Odie from the yearbook is here. My first question for the group is, are we over-documenting this experience?
Yes.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
But we're not going to change that. We've always wanted to share this experience with people. Whatever part of the trail experience is yours. And that's not just the experience of hiking. So hiking the Appalachian Trail, you want to share it with people at home because they have no clue what you're doing. So in the years past, you went home and you did a slide presentation at the church for 100 of your friends and family, and that was how you shared your hike experience with them. Today, you're walking down the trail going, yeah, sassafras is kicking my... And people
you can swear.
To see it. They want to see it. One of the YouTube super duper uber YouTuber hikers, that's my supercalifragilistic name for them, had 495,000 views on a single 7-minute video. Wow. 495,000 people. I don't think we're going to stop the documenting. I think that, Leave No Trace is trying to come up with an 8th principle that says don't tell anyone.
Oh.
Just go and don't tell anybody and don't take pictures and don't share it. I don't think that that world is never going to happen. So I think it's how we deal with it. And what I'm hoping to do with HikerTV is to put a little bit more positive spin on the reality for the other 95% of the people out there, because the 5% are being very well represented, but everybody else, I want to show and I want to be able to have those teachable moments to deal with some of the problems that we are creating because we're loving this trail so much.
Rachel, you have your YouTube channel. Arrow is your dog, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Right over there.
Are you and Arrow documenting your through hike?
We are, and I thought about it for a while because you hear people like, oh, vloggers or bloggers are annoying because they always have their camera in your face. But I think for me, 3.5 years ago, I didn't even know what the Appalachian Trail was. I grew up in Oklahoma, never heard of it. I moved to Georgia, and I discovered it, but thanks to my brother-in-law. And I got on YouTube and started researching, and because of all these people sharing their experiences and sharing what they know, I'm now through hiking the Appalachian Trail starting in 2 weeks. And so I think this is kind of almost my way of giving back and saying, hey, there's a world that probably a lot of people don't know about if you haven't grown up in this area. A lot of my friends are in the Midwest, so they're like, what are you doing? What is this? And I guess it's kind of my way of sharing what I learned so people learn from my mistakes and can experience an adventure for themselves.
What are you hoping to learn?
Oh, gosh. Oh, goodness.
Want to think about it?
Yeah, let me think about that. Sorry.
So turn around, who recently finished. What would you say you learned during your through hike?
Something that's probably not true when you went through.
Okay.
Was that these vloggers and so forth, and it's just think about common sense. You need more power. They have a camera, they have their phone, they have to transmit this stuff. So they take a lot of power. And they go in to common situations, going into town for resupply and so forth. And everybody's trying to get power, and they're just sort of an elephant in the room, where they're kind of hogging the resources. So a lot of vloggers on the trail, I could tell, were making people angry. A lot of it was, I think I realized there are people who are on the trail who are really very private people. Yeah. They do not want to be filmed. That's just the way they are. And someone comes along and they're whatever, and they stick that camera in their face. And my background's, I'm a school teacher. My eyes went right there, and I went, okay, these two people are not playing well together. So the resource of power and how much more now through hikers require is a change. I think that's happened in 2018, and I see in 2019 that's probably still going to be an issue.
I think for years, and sorry.
No, go.
I think for years, last night I was talking about the old Palm Pilots and teasing a friend of mine because she was monopolizing the phone line, because back in the old day, you had this device called a Palm Pilot that you put your journal in, and then you had to find a real phone with a landline, and you put it in it, and you had to hold it for 10 minutes while it downloaded. Well, she had done that like 10 times in one day, and we're like, well, we're going to get her. But because it does. It takes services that people did not need for a long time. But unfortunately, I think it's kind of equaled out by the fact that everybody has a phone. Everyone wants to use power. So even if there was no such thing as YouTube and no one vlogging, it's still 100 times harder to get your devices charged because everyone has one.
Yes,
or two, or
a
30.
scarcity of resources in power.
Yeah.
The best example I can give you, if you really don't understand what I'm talking about, almost everybody here, I'm sure, knows what Neil Gap is. When I got to Neil Gap, sorry, if you're looking at the building, the shoes are behind me. If you go to the right, there's a beautiful view, and over there is one receptacle, one. When I got there, the line was that long of phones lined up to be charged. And I was like, is there any other plugs around here? Yeah, there was one other, but it was inside where the people sleep, the dormitory area and so forth. And that one, same thing. And there was probably close to 100 people there.
My through hike was in 2007, back when very few people had cell phones on the trail. And those that did, it was offensive for them to misuse it right on the trail. I remember a number of times hikers being told, hey, dude, take that off the trail. Walk away from the trail. Do your business away from the trail. And if it was offensive then, it's still offensive today.
Well, one of the things I talked about last night, though, is how normalized we have become. Because in 2007, we had an issue with people like standing in front of you talking on their phone.
Right.
We do it now, and it might go through our mind that we're being rude, but being rude when it comes to these things has become normalized in our society.
Which is sad. That we shouldn't bring bad habits from that other world. I call this the real world.
This one?
The trail is the way the world should be. So let's bring technology to the trail the way the technology should be, and don't offend people with it. If you're going to speak to someone back home, step away privately. There are those that just don't want to participate in your fight with your girlfriend or whatever.
And guys, I hate to tell you this, but a 1 millimeter thick denier seal nylon is not soundproof.
No, not at all.
I'm sorry. There is no privacy. So when you're talking to your girlfriend at night, I am enjoying your conversation.
No, but kind of
The air quotes around talking is implied.
yeah. No, I think what he's saying is important. I think it's so important to be self-aware, not even just on the trail, but in real life too. Like if you're at the mall and you stop and you're texting, like that's annoying. But yeah, on the trail, I think that's something I'm really focused on is like even people like some of my friends that I met online, I met in person today, and I was like, hey, do you mind if I take a picture with you, or do you mind if I record you? And of course, they're all like, yeah. But, I think it's important to always ask if you're going to record someone, or if you just are going to record yourself, go away, step off, or if you're going to talk on the phone, get away from the people, because some people are really looking for that tranquility and, like, no electronics.
So my next question for the group is related to what we're talking about, and I want to start with Rachel, and not necessarily with a focus on. No, actually, that's what I'm going to do for the second question. Sorry, I want to come back to this one. So this one is still related to what we were talking about. I'm going to give you a couple of phrases, and I just kind of want to hear your take on what this phrase means to you.
Okay.
What does it mean to get in tune with nature?
That's me.
Yep, we'll start with you, and then everyone else can chime in if they.
Get in tune with nature. Okay, so for me, probably I love hiking. Hiking is my therapy. Backpacking is my therapy. And I think in our day-to-day world, we hear so many voices constantly from our phones, from our coworkers, from our spouses, from our parents, siblings, whatever. And I think sometimes we can kind of lose who we are. And I think all of this is man-made. All of that out there, to me, is God-made. That's where we started. And so I think when we get in nature, we realign with who we are and who we're meant to be. That's for me.
Awesome. Anyone else?
I have a saying when I do presentations that people would ask, when do you become a long-distance hiker versus someone who just goes out for daily hikes or whatever? What's the definition? And I usually say, walk in nature long enough for nature to get into you.
Mm.
Now, some people may call that forest bathing. Some may call that being in a tranquil forest experience or a come-to-God moment. There's a lot of things that it's called, but you'll know when it happens to you. And stay on the trail long enough for nature to get into you. And that place is amazing. It's amazing.
I've always said that it takes people about 3 weeks, and I'm waiting for it because I'm an emotion junkie. Nobody, if you don't know me, I'm watching because here's this super duper, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do 15 miles a day and I have the best of everything and, and they're not enjoying their hike. They're just going to do it because that's what they said they're going to do. So that's what they're going to do. And I'm like, I'm waiting for it. And then I see them and they have a very different look. They have a different look on their face. They have a different attitude. Maybe they're smiling more. Maybe it's raining and they're still smiling. And I'm like, you got it. It finally got you. And it really will. It usually will. And that's a lovely thing. And that's one of the reasons that brings everybody back is you don't have to go far to feel a difference. Walk 100 yards onto the trail and sit down on a log and sit there. You're going to feel different than you did in traffic, in the car, with all the voices and the devices and everything in your head. And anybody on a long distance hike will find as much of that as they want, even on this crowded Appalachian Trail.
Wow.
Don't even try, Chris.
Every time I hear one of his questions, it's so much deeper to me than, and the examples they gave were so perfect to what I want to say. I parsed the question. I'll admit it. I think there's two things. I think at first, someone going from what you called it, this, the first step is you get in rhythm with nature, okay? Rhythm in nature means you wake up in the morning because of nature. And I'm going to throw in also it's you. So for me particularly, light. It started getting lighter. I would wake up at night, I open my eyes, it's dark, I go back to sleep. If I open my eyes and it's light, I wake up. I'm now in rhythm with nature. But in tune with nature is the next step. That's what I think Ms. Janet absolutely perfectly described. That the physical, now you are part of nature. It's now inside of you. And you are different because now everything is rhythmic, but you realize exactly how much control you have of what those rhythms are. Can you stay up later? Yeah, you can choose to do that. Can you keep hiking if you're sore? Maybe not. And that, in tune with nature, you will see in the real world, many people become very frustrated when their body says, hang on, you need to rest. Thru hikers aren't like that. They tend to be like, you know what? I'm going to chill out. The nature of my body is telling me, they're absolutely at that point, they're in tune with nature and how they fit into it.
I have absolutely had my rhythms personally affected by having nature inside me in the form of giardia. Always filter your water.
It's a different rhythm.
Not quite the one we're talking
Always
about.
filtered my water.
Yeah.
Zero giardia.
Yeah, all the times I've hiked without giardia have been so awesome, I've decided to continue doing that. Okay, so here's another question that's somewhat related, and I'm going to start with Rachel again, because it worked so well last time. Tell me what you think of the phrase, you've heard this one a million times, good old hike your own hike.
I knew that was coming.
And we're going to skip Miss Janet because she has a 90-minute presentation on just that.
I think it kind of goes along with what we're talking about, listening to your body. If your body says, hey, I need a day to relax, and your family is pushing a 15-mile day, you stay and you chill. If that means you're injured and you need to take some time, or you want to hike 20 miles and someone doesn't and you want to, go for it. I think it's not, I'm going to do whatever I want and screw everybody else. That is not what hike your own hike means. It is still leave no trace principles. It's still all of that. It's still being respectful. I think it's just listening to my body, and I'm going to take this at my own speed and enjoyment.
Hike your own hike. Don't hike by committee. Hiking by committee has killed more people's chances of long distance hikes. Yep. They were perfectly capable, but they weren't perfectly capable of doing someone else's hike. So they end up failing. And they end up resentful. So, to me, hike your own hike has got to be protect your hike and protect your experience.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to donate my time because I think it means exactly what it says. And no offense to the panel, I find this one really difficult. First reason, I think it's impossible to not hike your own hike. You're gonna sit on the log you sit on. You are. I can't see anything. You're gonna do the pace you do. You're gonna drink when you want. 99.9% of what you do is gonna be based on what you want to do and when you want to do it. So how is that not hiking your own hike? We're talking about that 1% where we have somebody else involved and so forth. And I don't know if they mean like stand up to peer pressure, knowing yourself. I don't exactly know what they're advising. I think to contradict exactly what I just said, when I hear hike your own hike, this is my take on it. You're doing great. You're in rhythm. Everything's going along. something's going to happen. Mother Nature, something is going to kind of knock you off course. And that's where really you have to hike a plan that you have. Because when it happens, if you're hiking your hike, what are you going to do when that happens? Are you going to shelter here? Are you going forward? You got to have that clear in your mind. So these other people and stuff like that, well, they're going to sit around like a bunch of chickens talking about it. You've already thought about it. You know it hits, I do my thing. And you feel confident and so forth. But the people who aren't hiking their own hike, they're kind of hanging around with somebody, and that thing happens, you can see it. They just go like, uh-oh. And I'm just saying to you, if you really want to enjoy and hike your own hike, just have a plan for when that really great day you're having and you hear that thunder. And you're not caught. You're like, I know exactly what to do, where to go, and you really enjoy it. So you see, it's a little different.
But you're still protecting your hike.
Yeah, you
And
are.
I think that the hike your own hike has been used to the point that it's got a negative connotation with a lot of people because they think, it's, hey, man,
It's dismissive.
you're burning trash and you've got
Yeah.
food in your tent and hike your own hike, man. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. That's never what it meant. It's never what it was supposed to mean.
Right.
It's always about you have to be self-sufficient and take care of yourself. It's one of the reasons that hiking with a partner or a couple or anybody else has always been difficult. It makes it even more difficult when that family becomes 10 people and they're hiking
Right, yeah.
in a committee. So
Definitely
that's,
Yeah, it does not okay bad behavior in any way. And you're going to get called out on it. And the people who came before us have done such a great job that, throwing trash and all these things that people do, you're going to see very, very little of it. The examples that you all have set, it comes to a quick end. And especially people like myself or perhaps a little older, I have no problem walking up to somebody and going, you need to not do that, and so forth. So it's that idea, and you're right. People do say, well, I haven't had anybody say it to me, but I do know what you're talking about. They use it as an excuse for bad behavior.
yes,
Yeah.
and it's not.
It's not. No.
We did hike as a couple, and I think it's difficult, as Ms. Janet said, for groups to hike together, couples to hike together, because you have different speeds, you have different needs, you have just differences. And so it's important to stay true to yourself. Don't get caught up with the crowd and do exactly the pace that they're hiking at just to stay with a fun group. Just realize you're going to see them quite a bit anyway. So stay true to what your hike is all about. And for couples to stay together, you have to mesh just enough to stay together.
Get on your side of the tent.
Compromise.
I always like to joke that my wife was 90% behind me all the way.
I love it.
So, Chuck, I actually want to start with you on this one, or at least your end of the table, if you need a minute to think about this one, because I want to hear a story and see if you can think of one. We know trail angels and hostel operators in particular are famous in the hiking community for their kind and generous nature. And I'd like to hear your perspective on acts of kindness that you've witnessed that were hikers being kind to other hikers. If there's any particular thing that stands out, or maybe you have too many to pick from. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even have to think about that one. Obviously, Miss Janet comes to mind, but I'm going to skip over to Baltimore Jack. Baltimore Jack came and stayed with us at the Laughing Heart Hostel. It was one of the greatest honors of my life. He said, Chuck, I think I'm going to come and stay for a day, and if I have a good time, I might stay another day. Well, a month later, he was still there. And the month that he was with us, he spent every day on his knees outside of the room that we provided him, doing laundry for the hikers that left it there so they could go do their daily chores. And in the evenings, he took his Social Security check or whatever checks Jack got. And what he didn't spend on his liquor, he fed the hikers. And what a beautiful man. I miss him to this day. I miss his kindness and he was a hiker who loved hikers and dedicated his life, his money, his talents, all that he had and he was to the last moment. Jack, we miss you.
So do you mind if we sidebar for just a second and stay on the Baltimore Jack theme? I presume nearly everyone in this room knows who Baltimore Jack is, but surely there are people who either don't who are on the other end of this microphone who don't know who Baltimore Jack is. Miss Janet, would you be okay with giving us about 2 minutes or so, just who this man is and why he's so important to the trail?
Baltimore Jack was one of the best-known multi-time through hiker. Repeat offender is my word for it. Baltimore Jack failed on his first through hike attempt and came back year after year after year after year to successfully through hike the trail over and over again. One of his famous sayings, or saying that he says that has always stuck with me and I have borrowed, is everybody's like, why don't you go do the PCT? Why don't you go do the CDT? Are you going to be a triple crowner? Are you going to go do something else? He said, no, the AT is my trail. The AT, he said, is like your favorite theater. It's the most beautiful place that you go. It's the cathedral of your life that you go to. It's the stage that you go to. And the cast of characters in the play is different every time you go. And I think that helped to describe him because he chose the trail as his family of choice. And he gave to all of us a lot more than he ever took. But he always took a lot of my rides and didn't give me, gave me a moldy cheeseburger one time.
Turn around, any acts of kindness stand out for you? Or maybe something you were on the receiving end of?
It was the late 90s, and I was not a hiker, not at all. My world was whitewater paddling, and I was at what is referred to as the Mecca of whitewater paddling, that is Western North Carolina. You may know it as the NOC. It's the NOC, the Nantahala Outdoor Center. I was there. I was meeting my group of people. We were going to go kayaking, paddling. And this guy comes up, and he's kind of scruffy looking, and he's pacing. And I'm just fascinated by him. So I asked him, I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm waiting for them to open. I said, why? And he says, I have a package in there. He's very firm in what he said about this package. And I'm like, what's in the package? And he says, it's a Gatorade bottle.
Yes.
And I'm like, I have a Gatorade bottle. And he said it was a special Gatorade bottle. I left it at that. We began talking. Naturally, what comes up, what's your name? And he says, well, I need to explain to you what a trail name is. And I said, all right. He says, I'm going to tell you a story of how someone got a trail name. I was all ears. It was 1993. It was March. The middle of March, 1993, a blizzard hits the eastern United States. Snow is measured in feet. At that time, there are hikers in the Great Smokies. There's feet of snow. They're not going anywhere. They're calling out rescue, including, you know what really helps to get people out of snow? The same thing they use to get pilots out of jungles. Helicopter. Line goes down, picks up the person, brings them up. That's what happens. They're bringing up a hiker. Hiker's coming up. The guy's inside. He's wearing protective, so he's giving hand signals. He hands the guy the water. The hiker takes it. He's hanging on a cable, takes the water, and he drinks it. He's been in the snow for days. They swing him onto the helicopter. They give him a couple of vitamin pills. He takes those vitamin pills and he swallows them, and the guy starts doing this. And that, young man, is how he got his trail name of earplugs. Now, that story was told by the gentleman I'm talking to. And I said, I get it. I said, what's your trail name? And he says, well, it's from a Bruce Springsteen song. I've never been to Baltimore, and my name's not Jack.
We even had a rap one time that says, Jack, Jack, Baltimore Jack. I'm not from Baltimore, my name's not Jack. Of course, we all found out after he passed away that the name he had, very few of us knew that his name was Lawrence Tarlin, and we called him Larry. He even lied about that. He had a trail name for his real name, so he gave us some other name. So.
I love it. Oh my gosh.
So I want to start on the other end of the table again too, because you guys have done the whole thing, and this is probably a pretty obvious question. What surprised you about your through hike?
That I actually did not finish. We started in Georgia, made it to Maine, somewhere around Andover, got a call or two from home, and work was waiting for us and needed us. And Tigger, my wife, who's sitting back there, and I looked at each other and said, I think we're done. And so we still have this year the 100-mile wilderness and the summit at Katahdin to finish and be AT finishers. But we never felt bad about leaving. It was always about the cliche, the journey, not the destination. But for us, it really was the journey we were looking for. And this year we finish it.
All right.
Cool. You gotta wait till I'm up there.
I could not begin. The most surprising thing is, for some of you, you won't quit. No matter how bad it gets, you're just going to be like, oh, well.
Embrace the suck.
Yeah, and you'll be like a duck in a hurricane, and everything is just and you're just like, oh, yeah, it's raining, a little breezy, and this too will pass. You'll have a toughness that will, I can't begin. I admire it, and you can see it. I saw a woman today walking, and she was kind of hobbling a little bit. And that's kind of, we call it the through hiker hobble, and we all get it. So, but I think how much you end up loving it. Once you get out there, you're like, wow, it's like imagine a 2-year-old's never had ice cream and it's a really, really hot day. For some of you, that first lick of the ice cream trail, you're going to be like, all right, this is awesome.
That happened to me. Shoot.
I had a bumper sticker on my van that just died, and that bumper sticker was replaced on 5 different vans over the last decade. It says, the AT ruined my life.
Yep.
So, question for the whole group: How important is it to pass every blaze?
Extremely.
Yeah.
I don't really have. Nobody's watching you. Other hikers may know if you skip a few miles or if you yellow blaze or this, that, or the other. But back to what I said earlier, be true to yourself. Nobody is going to hold a standard when the question is, really comes down to it. Did you walk every step? Did you pass every blaze? But you want to be able to be true to yourself and say, yes, I did. And so that's the reason we're going back this year. There are little teeny tiny spots of blazes that we missed. And Miss Janet and others, we walked 2,000 miles, but we never put our names on a register, ever considered ourselves to this day through hikers. And I'm on the ALDA board. They kind of expect you to be a through hiker there. I never claimed to be a through hiker because I have not yet passed every single blaze and will not claim that distinction of a finisher until I do. So be honest with yourself. And I'm not saying that an absolute purist goes back to the exact place that he stepped off the trail to get back on, but
We see that, though.
Oh, no, Jack would tag the dirt. He would tag a stick and go back to the same stick and tag it if he.
some do that, and I admire it, and I came very close to that, but at least I won't skip any blazes before I claim a finish of the Appalachian Trail, and I'm 12 years in the making, so don't give it away. It's important.
I've honestly seen a lot of people that at the moment that they make the decision, I'm like, this is a slippery slope. You make the decision to skip 20 miles because the shuttle's cheaper, because, you know, that pretty girl that you saw yesterday at camp, that's where she's going to be. Or whatever your reason is that you feel like you need to skip something. And because I do a lot of shuttles, people think that, you know, that I shuttle people around parts of the trail a lot, and I really don't. Because I feel like that they're going to resent it themselves later, that they're going to come back next year and go, I'm doing the whole thing this year. For some people, it never becomes an important part of it. And I'm like, that's fine, because for some people it is more about the journey, and it becomes very much about the journey for them. I'm like, just don't lie about what you're doing. Exactly. You're hiking the Appalachian Trail. You're a long-distance hiker. You climb mountains. This is awesome. But don't tell everybody that you are through hiking when you skip Pennsylvania and, because you've heard of these bad rocks. You're not a through hiker until you're finished.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you're a 2,000 miler unless you walked 2,192 miles this year. But I will say, I think I agree with what you said. Like, for some people, they may blue blaze or yellow blaze, and they still have an incredible experience, and that's amazing. Like, your experience is what you make it and everything. I think to claim the thru hiker status in a 2,000 miler and you're skipping 20-mile sections, you're cheating yourself, because what are you missing on those sections? You could have missed the most beautiful outcrop that you've ever seen, or you could have met that person that had the story that changed your life, or you could have, I feel like you're cheating yourself out of these certain opportunities, and I don't know, I just
That's
don't
why I
you should.
think that blue blazes ought to be included in the through hike experience. If you choose to take
Aqua
an alternative,
blaze or-
because if you go do the CDT, you've got choices. You can go this
Yeah.
route, this route, or this route, and they still qualify as being a through hiker on the CDT.
Yeah.
The AT has amazing loop trails and amazing.
Yeah,
The
that's
way
true.
the Appalachian Trail was supposed to be was a 2,000-mile long trail that held together these blue blaze loop trails. You were never intended to hike white blazes and go from point A to point B. You were supposed to go to here and go, now this is a blue blaze that takes me to this waterfall, this amazing view, this beautiful campsite. And I do not think that should ever be held against anybody doing a through hike in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so
because
knock it
that
off.
Was awesome. do those blue
Stop
blazes.
it.
Do those blue blazes. You'll love them.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and I think I want to direct this one at you, Rachel.
Okay.
And this kind of ties together the last two things that we've been talking about. The importance of touching every blaze, but also hiking your own hike and having this experience that's just yours. I'm sure you've looked at the numbers and you've seen the statistical likelihood of your success. How are you preparing yourself mentally for the greater than 50% chance that you're not going to touch all of those blazes? Are you okay with that?
No, but yes.
Okay. Yeah. How are you working on that?
Well, I read Appalachian Trials. Have you guys read that book? Yes. Okay. If you have not read that book, I don't even care if you're not planning to through hike. Go read it, just for life. I read that book, and it talks about the reasons you want to through hike, what's going to happen when you finish your through hike, and then one that gets me because I'm really competitive. What is going to happen if you don't finish your through hike? What's going to happen? What are the repercussions if you quit? That one hit me pretty hard. Mentally, I've been dreaming about this for so long. I think watching other people's experiences, talking to other people, realizing that it's not all butterflies and rainbows like we, I think, like to think it is. Like, oh, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to float and I'm going to meet all these people and it's going to be so fun. Like, yeah, there's going to be days where I might twist my ankle and I have to take a day off because it hurts, or it's been raining for 3 days straight and I'm soaking wet. But I will say I've always been a really positive person, and I try to always see things from the more positive side. And I've actually talked to some through hikers, and they said that trait will help me get to Katahdin, because it's the people who let the circumstances weigh them down and ruin them. I think my biggest thing that I'm going to run into is missing my husband. That's going to be really tough. So, but he has been an amazing support to me, and he told me that if I called him and said, I'm coming home because I miss you, he said, I'm going to tell you to get your butt back on that trail. I don't want to see you. So, yay, Parker. But yeah, just I guess the reality of it, just knowing that it's not always going to be amazing, but I have what it takes, and I can do it.
So I'd like to second your recommendation. Zach Davis's book, Appalachian Trials.
Excellent.
Not only a good book to prepare you for a long hike, but it seriously reads like a self-help book, like
Yeah,
on how to
it's
get your
really
shit
good.
together.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Geez, what was it? I was going to say something else now and I forgot. Good thing I wrote down a bunch of stuff. Oh, I know. I was just going to add to that, the inevitability of not completing the trail. I said I wasn't going to interject too much of my own opinion in our discussion today, but I kind of want to say something about this subject because it's near and dear to my heart. And that's that what I like to tell people who are getting ready to start something like this, whether it's this trail or any other really long project, whether you're building a house or trying to change your life in some way, the opportunity to attempt this is a gift that many people never even get.
Absolutely.
There are people who dream about just setting a foot on the AT for even a day because they live in I don't know, man. People riding the subway right now wish that they were here for 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So if you go into this experience thinking about how every moment out there is precious and every day out there is a gift,
Yeah.
when you leave the trail early, you'll go home with the mindset of, oh, I have this collection of 38 beautiful days that I spent on the AT, instead of, oh man, look how far short I fell of my goal. And it almost belongs on like one of those posters, like a kitten hanging from a tree branch kind of. It's that sappy, but like I really think going into that mindset, which it sounds like you're doing, is going to put you on the right path. If I can use the pun, sorry. So I think you're going to do all right. So we have your resume, and HR will be in contact with you in a week or so. Thanks for coming in. Let's see. Embrace the suck. Oh, okay. So here's one. How are we doing on time? We've got about 15 minutes, so I'm going to ask one more, possibly two more questions, and this one again goes for the whole group. And I kind of want to start. I think I'm going to start on the opposite end and work our way down, because you're the only person right now to whom this question does not apply.
Okay, cool.
But or actually, I guess kind of maybe Miss Janet to a certain extent too. But what do you wish you had known before your long distance hike? And I guess for Miss Janet, we'll say, what do you wish you had known before you got into this whole craziness?
I went on the trail to find solitude in a wilderness experience. Little did I know how incredibly social it was. And if you think you're going to go out and have this solitary wilderness, private, quiet experience, you have to work at that. There are a lot of people, and you have to avoid people to not be around people. I wish I had known, I guess, that from the beginning that my best friends in life were going to be made on that trail, and that the trail was going to change my life. I might have gone in with a little different attitude, and I might not have wasted the first 300 miles before I accepted the reality that this was a new chapter in my life. I had a change of direction in my life. I had a healing from a previous divorce. I had a spiritual healing on the trail, and made folks like Miss Janet and Baltimore that I mentioned, and just lots of others, friends that I hope we're friends for the rest of our lives. I love these guys.
Family.
This is a family. I wish I had realized earlier that this was going to be a new family. And when I say that, my mom cringes, because she's still, I'm your family, I'm your family. Yes, Mom, you're still my family, but I called her from Damascus my very first trail days, and I said, Mom, I'm 48 years old, and I finally have met the people that are just like me.
Your tribe.
I've met my tribe. They look like me. They
Smell like me.
smell like me. They talk like me. They think like me. It took my whole life to find these people, but I have never looked back. I belong to a community. I belong to a tribe. I love you guys. You're new hikers. You're a part of the family. And like Odie stood up and gave his speech, we're royalty. We wear crowns on our heads. People in Manhattan on the subways wish they were you. And I wish I'd realized how precious the trail is, and how long-lasting the new friendships would be, and the new family that I was going to be adopted by was all done.
Beautiful.
Wow, that was like perfect.
We'll edit that one to go last.
When I heard this question, I was like, my first answer was, go for the experience. You're going to experience something. I don't know what it is. Just go experience it. So don't overplan, I think, is where I was kind of going with that. And so I didn't do that. So what would happen was that you become your own royalty. You have this, and this is what I did not understand, is how, number one, how comforting this is. I have everything I need on my back. Everything I need that I will reasonably face within the next 7 days, I have on my back. No matter what the nature throws at me, I'm going to be able to deal with it. When I get hungry, like royalty, I'll eat when I choose to eat. I will sit for as long as I choose to sit. No one will make me get up. No one will come along and go, you need to get up. When you go into town, the rules come back. All right, there is a police officer present. When you're in town and the police say you must get up, you must get up. But that's not true on the trail. You're royalty. You are the head cheese. And I did not understand. That scared me. If I had that much control over my own life, what would I end up being? And what I guess surprised me the most was just how comforting it was, how much in control I felt. When you're in that world, there's all kinds of stuff going on, and you're like, you have to respond to. But not on a hike. You're like, if you don't want to respond to it, you're okay. And I hate to say this, as a modern hiker, many hikers turn their phone off for hours and hours and hours on
Well,
end.
some of us don't.
They do. They just.
Love that, honestly.
calls me.
That was so good.
I thought this whole generation would be walking with their phone in their. No. They're out there. They're not on their phones. A lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't get any signal. Granted. But even then, it's like at a shelter, there was kind of like there were some like totally, and they don't talk. They text is what they do. But a whole lot of them were like absolutely, they're like, once a week I go email my mom kind of thing. So if you think the whole generation's all wired and stuff like that, there are many of them who find it doesn't mix with their hiking experience, that immersion into it. They pull back while they're on the trail, and then they go back into that world, like usually when they're in town kind of thing, and then they kind of pull back and they're back to hiking. Universally, they almost describe it as work. Yeah, they're like, I don't want to do any work, that kind of thing. So that, to me, I expected everybody under the age of 30 to be just walking down the trail with a phone in their face.
Gary was right. I'm not a long-distance hiker per se. In 2011, I did 400 miles.
Yay.
What I would have loved to have known
Great.
before I
A
started
smattering of
hiking
polite applause.
was that a fat woman with 35 pounds on her back can still hike. You just can't compare what you're doing to everyone else's.
Yes.
What I wish that I had known is that everything that I had known about through hiking before I started walking myself I wish I had not known any of it. And I've told a lot of my repeat offenders that like to be down here in Georgia and go hike for the first month with the class. I'm like, go hike the Benton Mackay. Leave my newbies alone and let them figure it out. Because you're not always helpful in your advice and your attitude and the way you treat them. Because the more pressure that is put on someone to hike a certain way, then they think that they're failing if they don't meet those guidelines. And when I realized that I had a 0 day for every hiking day, keep that stuff balanced, hike a day, take a day off, taking zeros in the woods, and yes, as a through hiker, I failed miserably. But I won't take those months back and those 400 miles back for anything. And maybe someday I'll do more. But I like to stand around and talk about it.
So, Rachel, is it too soon to ask you what's surprised you so far?
I mean, I've been...
Other than having a microphone thrust into your face the day that you meet the...
Hey, come be on this hiker panel with all these experienced people.
Let's make fun of her.
Yeah. Welcome to the trail. I mean, I've been on the AT for the last 3 years, like doing section hikes and stuff. I kind of would almost second what he said down there is the people. Like, I just did not expect... I guess I didn't really think about it, but I guess when you're out there, you're your truest self, you're your raw self, you can't really hide behind anything, and so people are just so genuine. I've experienced trail magic, I've experienced trail angels, I've experienced just like the good part of humanity, and it honestly restores your faith in humanity, because this world we live in, you get on Facebook, you're like, these people crazy, and like, then you get on the trail, and people are just so genuine, they honestly care about you and taking care of you. Arrow gets more treats than I think is even possible for her to consume on the trail. People's like, oh, let me give her food. But just the goodness of people and how safe it is, how close people are, and yeah, they're the best.
Well, I'm really glad you said the people, because that transitions perfectly into our closing. But before we do, I just want to take a minute and thank our panel members. Chuck Norris, Laughing Heart Hostel, thank you for opening your home and heart to the hiking community and for all you do for the hikers. Chris Clevenger, Trail Name Turnaround. We all know that a through hike can be a very personal, intimate experience. Thank you for sharing your stories with us today and on the show. Miss Janet, just thank you for just being Miss Janet.
Yes.
Some people think that Miss Janet person's real.
It's kind of like the Dread Pirate Roberts. It's going to be a different Miss Janet every time. Like, I thought Miss Janet had red hair. No, she's brunette this year.
You never know.
Yeah, and Rachel, Hiking with Arrow, good luck on your adventures. Thank you for allowing us to get together and make fun of you on your first day.
Hey, no problem.
I'm just kidding. So a little bit about the people. So Odie has his You Are Royalty speech that's kind of becoming a tradition for him to read at the kickoff and at Trail Days. And I have something similar that I've been doing at the kickoff for a couple of years. I've not memorized this and read it to my cactus yet, so I have to read off of a piece of paper. I hope you'll forgive me. But this is my love letter to the hiking community. And it's simply titled, Why the AT? I see Miss Janet. I'm going to stall for time while Miss Janet gets her.
Never mind. I'm going to get theirs.
So you've all heard about the White Blazes. You've seen tons of pictures of breathtaking views taken from all these mountaintops, and you know about the rocks and the rain and the mice and the moose. Those things are everywhere, though, right? What's so special about this particular strip of dirt? Of all trails, why the Appalachian Trail? Again and again, the answer we hear most is it's the people. It's that sense of community. Hiking on the AT, whether you are striving for your first or 9th through hike, or simply doing a section hike, makes you a member of this giant dysfunctional family comprised mainly of eccentric go-getters. After all, you don't meet too many slackers at 6,000 feet. In Georgia, I met a father and son team who were finishing their section hike. The dad was in his 60s, and his son was about 35. They had hiked every year for 17 years, and that was the year they were finally completing the AT together. The son had already made plans to hike the whole thing again with his daughter. The trail is a place of traditions, not just the famous ones. In North Carolina, I met a man with breast cancer at a water stop. I never even knew such a thing existed. He was also a nurse, and while we filtered our water together, his stories opened my eyes. The trail is made of people. In Virginia, I met a mother and daughter at the top of Mount Rogers, a short blue blaze just off the AT. The summit there has no views, only trees. They were having a snack, and when I greeted them, they shrugged and answered me in Russian. We shared our food and did our best to make each other laugh for nearly an hour, despite the language barrier. The blazes go from Georgia to Maine, but the trail itself reaches much farther. In Pennsylvania, I contracted Lyme disease and suffered miserably over the rocks, desperate for any relief. A stranger took me into his home and brought me to a doctor. His wife made me soup, and they refused every offer to repay them. The trail has plenty of shelters, but the people around it will open their homes and hearts for you. There is goodness in this world, and much of it flourishes around this strange, narrow path. I underestimated Maine and found myself stupidly short by a whole day's supplies and far from any town. I had eaten everything in my bag and emptied my pockets and still had many miles left to go when I suddenly found myself knee-deep in blueberries. I probably wasn't going to die without them, but nevertheless, that surprise gift of fruit was in my eyes a bounty which changed my outlook on life, if only for just that day. The trail provides, and magic doesn't always come from the angels. Sometimes it comes from the very ground itself. Anyone who has explored the Green Tunnel for even a day has memories like these. City dwellers are baffled by us. Why would anyone want to do this? Many of us simply feel the inexplicable pull of the horizon, that desire to sleep under the stars, even if it means waking up in the dirt. We're baffled by it too. Some of us have no idea why we're out here at all. We can't help ourselves, so we formed a support group, and it meets among the White Blazes every year. Thank you. Oh, that's it.
That's it.
The next speaker will be here momentarily.
Oh, Sure, yeah. Any questions, or we have
It was supposed to be a Q&A, wasn't it?
30 seconds before the next show starts.
Okay, all I want to say is that Miss Janet and Walton back, and this lady started me. Where they lived there, and my husband lives 10 minutes down the road, but I did not call him or go home. I went to the hospital there. She was there. Jack was there. They served us food, and that's when I was with her. And then I finished this year, 8 years.
It's the reason I call you all my kids, because that makes me so happy. Oh, God. It's always me.